a decorated Air Force general, respected, unshaken, until one morning jog and a takedown by cops who saw only his skin. That badge don't change your DNA, one sneers. The city ignites. His faith cracks. But he doesn't stay down. This isn't just his fight, it's a battle for the soul of a nation. The sun had just begun its lazy ascent over Auburn Avenue, draping the red brick facades of sweet Auburn in a warm, golden haze. Pigeons cooed from wrought iron balconies. A lone church bell tolled in the distance. General Terrence Bowmont laced his Nike running shoes and tightened the brim of his cap, eager to recapture the simple freedom of his boyhood morning jogs. At 54, his salt and pepper hair peeked from under the cap, but his stride still carried the fluid grace of a fighter pilot hurtling through the sky. Sweet Auburn had changed in some ways. New coffee shops, refurbished murals of Dr. King, and yet, in the hush before dawn, it still hummed with the same quiet pride. He inhaled the familiar sense of magnolia and early brewed coffee, recalling how young recruits at the Air Force Academy had called him Bo, charmed by his southern drawl and unshakable composure. He thought of Dr. Simone Beaumont's warning when he'd first considered this morning ritual. Promise me you'll keep your eyes open, even when you're running from the past. He smiled at her playful seriousness. At the corner of John Wesley Dobbs Plaza, he slowed for a sip of water, glancing at the Martin Luther King Jr. historic site across the street. The reflective pool mirrored the statue's stone silhouette, a solemn reminder of battles waged not with weapons, but with ideals. A fitting backdrop for a jog, he mused, where every step felt like both celebration and homage. Then came the sirens. 2 squad cars, Atlanta PD black and blue, screeched to a halt behind him. Officers Brett Hajj and Dean Coulter jumped out, hands hovering near their holsters. Beaumont froze mid-stride, water bottle in hand. His heartbeat steadied. Decades of training reminded him to remain calm. He raised a gloved hand in greeting. General Bowmont? Hajj barked, squinting at the jogger's military ID clipped to his waistband. Identification now. Beaumont lifted the plastic card, the gold-embossed eagle glinting in the morning light. Of course. I'm on my morning run. Don't move. Coulter's voice cracked like a twig underfoot. A knot formed in Beaumont's chest. May I ask why you? Hajj snatched the ID and rifled through it, brow furrowed. You in uniform or not, you're black. That badge don't change your DNA. Beaumont's pulse thundered. Sir, with all due respect, I'd appreciate an explanation. But Coulter twisted his arm behind his back, yanking Beaumont to his knees on the asphalt. Pain flared in his shoulder, the world tilted sideways. He heard the wet slapping of his own skin, the muffled bark of Coulter's command, get on the ground. Stop! Beaumont gasped, voice strained. I'm a general in the United States Air Force. My record. Shut up, Hajj sneered, kicking away Beaumont's water bottle. You think a badge forgives your skin? It was Lena Carter who crossed the street, phone in hand, heart hammering. At 27, she'd seen too many black men pinned under authority, too many stories reduced to an all-too-familiar script. Suspect, cuffed, silenced. She pressed record and held the phone steady, zooming in on Hodge's face. When Hajj spat his sneer, Lena's breath caught in her throat. She might lose her job for filming, but she couldn't look away. Within seconds, the video had captured it all, the disbelief in Beaumont's eyes, the raw force of Coulter's grip, the contempt in Hodge's voice. Lena's fingers moved like lightning, uploading to social media. Breaking. Decorated Air Force general violently detained by police near MLK historic site. Hashtag uniform beneath. By the time Simone Beaumont, watching from home on her laptop, saw Lena's post come through, her chest tightened. She recognized those broad shoulders, the dignity in every line of his posture, even as he knelt against the concrete. Blood rushed to her ears. She dialed Andre Coleman before she could second-guess herself. Back on Auburn Avenue, onlookers gathered. Some whispered prayers, others fished phones from pockets. Beaumont's jaw clenched, spit mingling with gravel. He tasted grit and indignation. He summoned every ounce of self-control, but as Coulter yanked him upright and slapped the cuffs on tight, he dared to think, after everything I've done for this country, is this how it repays me? Lena's live stream exploded, thousands watching in real time. Comments poured in. Who is that officer? How could they do this? Media buzz fed the fire. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution's Andre Coleman texted Simone. Terrence? Is he okay? Moments later, Simone's trembling voice answered, no. They're holding him at Techwood PD, Brett Hajj. Dean Coulter. I'm heading there now. As the squad cars disappeared, sirens wailing, Bowmont's mind drifted to Colorado Springs, to racist cadets hurling insults his first week at the academy. He remembered Colonel Ruiz's words, "They see your color first. Make your rank armor." But today, that armor felt lighter than air. Memory is a cruelly precise archivist. For Terrence Bowmont, the smell of pine needles in the thin Colorado air summoned a rush of recollections, some triumphant, some searing with humiliation. He was 20, a fresh-faced cadet at the Air Force Academy, green as new grass but burning with ambition. The powdered snow crackled beneath his boots as he marched in formation, the words of the oath still unfamiliar against his tongue. He'd earned his appointment through late-night cramming sessions and scholarship essays that sang of service and sacrifice. Yet on his first afternoon, a group of upperclassmen cornered him outside Fairchild Hall, laughing as they circled. "Look at this cupcake," sneered one, tugging at Terrence's neatly pressed blue uniform. "Do you think they let you wear that because you're special, or because they felt bad you're black?" They shoved him into the wall, scuffed the edge of his sleeve. His heart hammered like artillery fire. He wanted to fight back, to shout, to call on his cadet privileges, but the weight of their numbers pressed down. Before he could speak, a sharp voice cut through the jeers. "Gentlemen, that's enough." Colonel Margaret Ruiz strode toward them, her uniform immaculate, aviator's wings pinned above her heart. A Latina pilot with 20 years of flight time and more medals than most generals, she looked every inch the leader. The cadet snapped to attention, retreating as she approached Terrence, offering her hand. "Cadet Bowmont, are you all right?" Her voice was steel-wrapped in compassion. He swallowed, bristling. "Yes, ma'am." She nodded to the circling cadets. "Disperse." They melted away, eyes shifting like cornered wolves. When they'd gone, she turned back. "Come with me." In her office, she closed the door, her eyes never leaving his. "They'll always see the color first," she said, voice soft but unyielding. "Make your rank armor. Let them know you by your deeds, not by their ignorance." That moment cemented his resolve. He studied harder, flew longer, lived every day by discipline. He soared in T-38 Talons and later in F-16s. The roar of the engines his prayer, the sky his refuge from earthbound prejudice. Each mission, each perfect landing, stitched new strength into his armor. On evenings when loneliness struck, when letters from home arrived scented with magnolia and a mother's worry, he'd think of Simone. Her acceptance letter from Emory arrived just as he was commissioned. That night, they celebrated over lukewarm cafeteria coffee. She wore a white lab coat, voice brimming with promise. He saw in her eyes that same quiet determination. They married 2 years later in a chapel on campus, vows echoing beneath stained glass windows. When their son Jamal came a year after that, Simone cradled him, tears glistening on her lashes. "I feared the world he'd inherit," she whispered to Terrence. He kissed the infant's forehead, heart swelling. He vowed then to shape a world where their son could run free, where the color of his skin wouldn't be a barrier. Yet each deployment reminded him his uniform was only armor, it could never change the eyes that judged him. On remote Pacific islands, he enforced no-fly zones with precision only to return home and feel those no-fly zones erected around his humanity. A training exercise gone wrong in Nevada had him ejecting from an F-16 midair. He landed in a dusty ravine, legs battered, pride in tatters. But as he stood, brushing bone against gravel, he thought of Colonel Ruiz's words and rose, kneeling only to gather himself before he walked back to base. "Steel in his wings," she'd said once. "You don't break. You learn to bend." Years passed. He climbed ranks with relentless professionalism. Each promotion bore witness to his excellence. Yet at every stage, an unspoken barrier hovered above his seniority. Faces in the Pentagon changed color when he entered the briefing room. Chairs shifted. Murmurs followed. For all the medals on his chest, moments of deference were brittle, also faked, like applause through soundproof glass. Then came the appointment as commander of the 22nd Air Refueling Wing at McConnell AFB. During the ceremony, he scanned the crowd, colleagues, politicians, his proud parents standing in the back, heads held high. He gave a speech about service and unity, speaking of the wing as a family that transcended backgrounds. Yet in the back of his mind, he practiced every reactive phrase in case the congratulations veered toward suspicion. In that life of highs tempered by prejudice, Simone remained his anchor. She pored over epidemiological data at Emory, probing why minority communities suffered higher rates of disease. When a fellowship took her to Haiti to study post-earthquake outbreaks, she sent him postcards with photos of children rebuilding schools from ruins. She called late at night, voice tinged with exhaustion and grace. Every time she returned, the two of them lay in bed, hands entwined, reaffirming that their love was refuge. And when protests erupted after another unarmed black man was killed in a city half a continent away, they sat together watching TV in silence, tears gathering in Simone's eyes. "You served a country that won't serve you back," she said at last, voice cracking. Terrence wanted to argue. He loved his country, but he felt the shame in her tone. He understood. So when he jogged through sweet Auburn decades later, he carried all those flashbacks in his lungs. The icy Colorado mornings, the roar of jet engines, the hushed stares in Pentagon hallways, the warmth of Simone's embrace, every thread wove into the man officers Hajj and Coulter saw only as just another black man. For once, he felt utterly exposed. A patrol car's blue light flickered in his blood. He steeled himself, mind flicking through Colonel Ruiz's wisdom. Your armor, your rank, it's worthless if you can't wear it where it matters. Because today, in a neighborhood that birthed his dreams, he needed his rank to protect him. And it didn't. Keisha Turner stood atop a repurposed concrete barrier on the east side beltline, her megaphone raised like a torch. The late afternoon sun gleamed off the steel tracks behind her, illuminating a crowd that spilled in every direction, students in Spellman sweatshirts, church groups clutching hymnals, families with toddlers balanced on shoulders. Banners fluttered, #uniform beneath, protect black lives, accountability now. At 22, Keisha had the kind of fierce energy that made you believe anything was possible. Born in Chicago but raised in Atlanta by her grandmother, she'd come of age learning protest chants alongside civil rights anthems. When she heard about General Bowmont's arrest, she knew this was her moment. She unleashed her opening salvo. "Justice for General Terrence Bowmont." The crowd roared. They repeated the name like a sacred phrase, breathing life into the hashtag that had erupted overnight. A teenage girl waved a homemade sign. He wore 2 uniforms. Both deserve respect. Keisha pumped her fist. Behind her, Darius Turner, her 18-year-old brother, handed water bottles to protesters. He studied political science at Morehouse Prep and had inherited Keisha's conviction, though tempered by a quieter temperament. When he saw their mother's worried face etched on a photo pasted to a sign, his jaw tightened. He shot a glance at Keisha. "Sis, the police are lining up at the north end. They're bringing in bike units." Keisha nodded, scanning the tree-lined path. Uniformed officers in riot gear formed a solid line ahead. In front of them, a phalanx of photographers crouched, lenses trained like rifles. Andre Coleman, seated cross-legged on the pavement, adjusted his notebook and recorder. His press badge from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution glinted in the light. "Keisha," he called quietly, "I'm on to Hajj's file. 3 prior suits, 04, 11, 17, and each settled quietly out of court. But I dug up something else. A leaked audio from 17. Hajj bragging about roughing up a suspect in Georgia City. I've got witnesses willing to testify, but they're scared." He tapped his pen against the pad. "This could break the case wide open." Her chest swelled with hope. "Keep digging, Andre. Every bit helps." As Keisha began her keynote, linking Beaumont's incident to broader patterns of police violence, a ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. On the sidewalk, Simone Beaumont stepped into view, phone pressed to her ear, eyes flashing with determination. She wove through the protesters until she reached Keisha's barrier. "Keisha Turner?" Simone asked, tone clipped. Keisha recognized the name. She'd been coordinating with Simone this morning to vet speakers. "Dr. Bowmont," Keisha greeted, nodding. Simone's gaze flicked to the megaphone in Keisha's hand. "Thank you for doing this. But why am I only seeing you now? Where's Terrence's statement? Why has he said nothing himself?" A murmur passed through the protesters. Keisha set the megaphone aside. "With all due respect, Dr. Bowmont, silence can be strategic. Your husband's testimony will carry more weight from the courtroom." Simone's lips pressed into a thin line. "I understand strategy. I've spent my life advising governments on disease outbreaks. But Terrence taught me that silence in the face of injustice is a privilege, one he can't afford." She softened, voice quieter. I need him to find his voice. For our son's sake." Darius hovered behind his sister, tension rippling through his frame. Keisha placed a hand on his shoulder. "Simone, I promise we'll have Terrence speak. But right now, the streets need to roar." Simone let out a breath, nodding. "All right, just keep me posted." She slipped into the crowd, a ripple of respect parting for her white lab coat and poised intensity. Moments later, the temperature shifted. The bike unit edged forward. Shields snapped into place. Keisha raised her arms, urging calm. But excitement turned to anxiety as a single officer lifted his baton. "Don't move," he shouted. A line of bikes charged, horns blaring. The crowd ducked as officers pressed forward, pushing bodies back with wrenches of force. Darius stumbled, water spilling at his feet. He turned to Keisha, face pale. They're coming for us." Keisha grabbed him, pulling him toward a side path. "Keep moving, stay safe." But before they could escape, Officer Hajj appeared at the head of the line, helmet visor reflecting the setting sun. His face was impassive, posture rigid. When he spotted Keisha's banner, he stomped forward, cuff clicking open. "Hands up!" "Now," he bellowed. Chaos erupted. Pepper spray canisters hissed. Shouts merged with cries. Keisha shoved Darius behind a tree as Hajj advanced on her. She raised her hands. "Please, this is peaceful." But Hajj grabbed her arm. Darius cried out, rushing forward. Hajj swung his baton. Darius blocked with his forearm. The world froze for a heartbeat as baton met flesh. Keisha screamed. Andre leapt to his feet, camera rolling. "Keisha! Darius!" His voice cut through the mayhem. The lenses of every press photographer swiveled toward Hajj's aggression. The image of a female activist and her brother beaten on the beltline spread instantly, merging with Lena Carter's earlier video of Bowmont. In the silence that followed Hajj's strike, a single voice rose. "Bullshit." It was Terrence Bowmont's baritone, calm yet thunderous. He emerged from the throng, still in his jogging gear, blood staining his left sleeve from the earlier arrest. He strode toward Hajj, eyes blazing. The officers froze, unsure how to handle a general without rank insignia in disgrace. "Hajj, stop this." His voice carried the weight of years of command. The crowd hushed. Hajj hesitated, baton raised. "Oh, now you want respect?" Hajj snarled. "You think a uniform means you can flaunt it?" Bowmont stepped closer, unflinching. "I thought you knew better than to brutalize unarmed citizens. But I was wrong about you." A ripple of shock passed through the line. Hajj's jaw clenched. He lowered the baton with visible reluctance. In that electric moment, the belt line became more than asphalt and rails. It became ground zero for a movement. The cameras captured every detail. The general's steel gaze, Hajj's stuttering retreat, the healing press of Keisha and Darius, trembling but unbowed. Seconds later, Bowmont turned to Keisha. "Get your brother out of here. Now." His tone brooked no argument. Keisha wrapped an arm around Darius. Together, they melted into the crowd, guided by Andre, who murmured, "We'll get you home safe." Bowmont faced the remaining officers. "I'm filing formal complaints against every one of you who crossed the line today." His voice was low but carried. "And I won't rest until qualified immunity no longer shields men like Hajj." As he spoke, the sun dipped behind the Atlanta skyline, backlighting the scene in fiery hues. The protesters surged forward, chanting, "Justice! Justice! Justice!" And above the din, a new hashtag trended, #baton brought to light. Keisha watched from the sidelines, tears in her eyes. She caught Simone's gaze across the crowd, wordless solidarity. Andre scribbled furiously in his notebook. Darius, arms slung around his sister, looked up at the sky. In that moment, the streets spoke louder than any courtroom ever could. The grand rotunda of the Fulton County Courthouse rose before General Bowmont like a cathedral of justice, marble pillars soaring to vaulted ceilings, sunlight slanting through stained glass panels bearing scales and gavels. Simone stood beside Terrence in the gallery, fingers entwined, eyes fixed on the bench where Judge Marisol Grant would soon preside. The air smelled of polished wood and anticipation. Inside the courtroom, prosecutor Maya Patel arranged her exhibits on a walnut table. At 29, Maya carried the quiet confidence of someone who knew hardship firsthand. The daughter of Indian immigrants, she'd watched her parents toil double shifts to keep their grocery store afloat. She'd vowed that day to defend anyone wronged by those in power. This case, charging officers Brett Hajj and Dean Coulter with false arrest and battery, felt like a culmination of everything she believed. Across the aisle, Deputy District Attorney Harrison Briggs sat slack-jawed, his crisp suit ill-fitting, gaze flickering between Maya and her client's stoic figure. Briggs had inherited the case from an indifferent DA who'd seen it as too politically volatile. The seasoned brass in his office whispered that qualified immunity would insulate the officers. He tapped his pen, rehearsing objections he wouldn't need. Judge Grant entered, robes swishing, gavel in hand. "All rise." The courtroom hushed as she seated herself. "Call your first witness." Maya stood. "Your Honor, the state calls General Terrence Bowmont." The bailiff approached. Bowmont rose, tall, composed. wearing a dark suit but no insignia. His gait still carried the bearing of a commander. He sat at the witness stand and swore his oath. Maya began. General Bowmont, you were detained on April 25th at approximately 6:30 a.m. while on a jog in Sweet Auburn. Is that correct? Beaumont's deep voice filled the room. Yes, ma'am. Did you present your Air Force identification to the officers? I did. He raised his hands, palms out. Multiple times. Briggs interjected. Objection? Your honor? Relevance? Judge Grant leaned forward. Overruled. Maya clicked to the next slide, a photo of Bowmont kneeling on asphalt, hands cuffed. The bystander video played on the courtroom monitors. The gallery gasped at the sight of Hajj's sneer. Beaumont's voiceover narrated, You think a badge forgives your skin? Maya asked. How did you feel in that moment, General? He closed his eyes briefly. Invisible. Trapped. I wore 2 uniforms, one they saluted, one they shackled. His words resonated like the tolling of a bell. Next came Lennox Bradford, Lena Carter's attorney, who authenticated the video. Lena testified via video link, recounting her fear and resolve. On cross-examination, Briggs tried to undermine her credibility. You live 3 blocks from the site. Aren't you biased toward the defendant? But Lena's calm persistence withstood every assault. Then Maya called Andre Coleman. His investigative report lay open on a lectern as he detailed Hajj's prior settlements. Each incident echoed similar brutality claims, each officer's badge a license to injure without consequence. He produced court documents, witness statements, audio transcripts of Hajj's boast, each stitch tightening the net around Hajj's defenses. Briggs rose to object repeatedly, hearsay. Irrelevant. Yet Judge Grant's patience held firm. Every piece of evidence landed with weight. At midday recess, the press huddled in the hall. Reporters from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, each pushing their own narrative slant, crowded around Maya and Terrence. Camera flashes punctuated their statements. Maya offered measured remarks. Our justice system is only as strong as its willingness to hold wrongdoers accountable. Today, we prove that no one, no matter their rank or uniform, stands above the law. Bowmont, flanked by Simone, spoke softly. This isn't just my case. It's a question of how we define freedom in America. By afternoon, the defense began. They called Hajj first, smug in his crisp uniform, starched collar creasing his jaw. Maya watched as he proclaimed he'd feared for his safety, describing Beaumont's resistance that necessitated force. His voice dripped deflection. Then Coulter took the stand, echoing Hajj's story. Their testimonies parroted each other so precisely it felt rehearsed. Under cross-examination, Maya highlighted inconsistencies, the lack of video from their body cams, the absence of any radio call for backup. Briggs objected to every pointed question. Judge Grant sustained only when essential. Maya's closing argument was electric. She strode before the jury box, eyes sweeping each juror. Qualified immunity was designed to protect well-meaning officers from frivolous lawsuits, not to shield patterns of abuse. She paced, voice rising. Officers Hajj and Coulter had a duty to serve and protect. General Bowmont served a country that now hides behind immunity to deny him justice. That badge does not give you license to brutalize. She concluded, we ask only that you see beyond the uniform, beyond the deflection, and recognize the truth. Racism, whether overt or masked by protocol, must be exposed. We ask for your verdict, guilty. Silence. The jurors were sequestered. Days crawled by. In those hours, Simone retreated into her research, eyes red from reading countless studies on racial trauma. Terrence revisited Colonel Ruiz's grave, speaking into the wind, vowing to carry her legacy forward. Keisha organized solidarity vigils. Andre wrote op-eds that blasted the courthouse's inaction on qualified immunity. Darius joined community forums, offering his youthful perspective. On the morning of the verdict, the courthouse doors opened early. Simone clutched Terrence's hand. Keisha and Darius stood behind them. Maya adjusted her suit jacket, nerves hidden beneath practiced poise. Reporters lined the hall. Judge Grant re-entered. Will the parties please rise? The jury has reached a verdict. The bailiff unfolded the paper. Hard in Terrence's throat, Simone's breath caught. The bailiff looked up. In the case of State of Georgia versus Brett Hajj and Dean Coulter, we find the defendant. He paused. A soft exhale in the gallery. Then, not guilty on all counts. A storm of reaction exploded. Simone gasped. Terrence's shoulders slumped. Maya's face hardened, years of work undone in a breath. Keisha's fists clenched. Outside, protesters who'd gathered for the announcement surged with rage. In the hallway, Briggs shook Maya's hand with faint condolence. Tough break, he murmured. Maya's voice was low, trembling. This isn't justice. It's a travesty. As they exited, chanting began anew. No justice. No peace. The crowd rippled like a tidal wave. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Maya raised her voice above the din. We will appeal. Qualified immunity cannot stand as a shield for brutality. Keisha joined her. This fight isn't over. Darius stomped the pavement, his face a mask of fury and fear for the future. Terrence, freed of the courtroom's formalities but shackled by its outcome, swallowed hard. He looked at his wife, her eyes fierce, her jaw set, and felt a pivot within. The legal system had failed him. If justice wouldn't find him here, he would build it somewhere else. As the sun dipped low, the courthouse steps glowed in amber. The streets outside thrummed with energy. Cries, drums, megaphones. The city's pulse refused to still. In that fracture between law and morality, a new resolve crystallized in Terrence's mind. If the gavel's whisper could not bring justice, then the people's roar would. The silence inside the Bowmont household was different now, thick with tension, fractured like splintered glass. The once steady heartbeat of their family had become erratic, each member grappling with the courthouse's failure in their own way. It was Monday morning when Jamal, their 17-year-old son, texted from his bedroom, voice clipped, Mom, school's calling. They say I threatened Miss Harding. Can you come? Simone's heart lurched. Jamal was quiet, thoughtful, a star student with dreams of NASA. The idea that he'd threatened a teacher seemed inconceivable. Simone glanced at Terrence, who stood motionless by the window, gazing at the horizon where peach-hued clouds drifted over the city. His military precision, once so reassuring, had frayed. The bruise on his shoulder, yellow-green now, was a reminder of the jog. His eyes, once calm and resolute, flickered with shadows she didn't recognize. She caught his gaze. He nodded once. In the car, Jamal sat stiffly, earbuds in, staring at the dashboard clock. Simone placed a hand on his shoulder. Honey, talk to me. He sighed and pulled out an earbud. It's all because I asked why the curriculum never mentions black astronauts. Miss Harding said I was challenging her authority. Then she said I was aggressive. Now, Simone's chest tightened. Jamal, you did nothing wrong. At Colonial Hills High, the assistant principal met them in the front office. His face was sympathetic yet rehearsed. Dr. Bowmont, Mr. Bowmont, Jamal's been suspended for 3 days under the school's threatening behavior policy. He's required to complete an online course on respectful discourse. Jamal's shoulders slumped. Online course for asking a question? Simone squared her shoulders. This is wrong. We'll appeal. Terrence's voice was quiet but firm. They chose to label curiosity as aggression because they can't face the truth. The assistant principal nodded awkwardly. I understand your frustration, sir. But policy is policy. As they left, Simone's eyes welled. Why is he being punished for wanting to learn about people who look like him? Terrence closed his eyes, fists unclenching. Because the system fears what it can't control. His voice cracked, the first fissure in his composure in days. Back home, they found Keisha at the kitchen table, laptop open to coverage of yesterday's protests. Darius flitted in and out, scrolling through social media feeds. When Terrence recounted Jamal's suspension, Keisha slammed her hand on the table. So they punish a teenager for asking about representation? It's the same shit all the way down. She stood, pacing. We need to organize a school board protest. Darius appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. I just got a court date. They're charging me with resisting arrest. They said I assaulted an officer. Simone's face went pale. But I saw the video, Darius shook his head. No one's returning calls. They booked me, took my mugshot, fingerprinted me. They're calling it assault on an officer. Terrence's jaw tightened. Not again. That night, he sank into a chair on the back porch, the weight of their collective trauma pressing on him. The cicadas hummed like distant artillery. Simone joined him, slipping an arm around his shoulders. He leaned into her warmth, but the tension remained coiled in his spine. I failed him, he whispered, nodding toward the house. Failed who? Simone paused. Jamal? Darius? Yourself? Because you served this country, but it served you back with handcuffs and bruises. He closed his eyes, seeing Colonel Ruiz's grave once more, the simple stone marker beneath an aspen tree in Colorado Springs, engraved with her name and years of service. He remembered how she'd refused to let him give up, how she'd taught him that armor wasn't just rank, it was resilience, community, and action. He stood abruptly. I need to see her. Simone rose, worry lacing her voice. Not at night, He kissed her forehead. I need guidance. The drive to Colorado Springs was a blur, the landscape morphing through highways and plains. He arrived at the Academy Cemetery just before dawn, the sky a gradient of violet and rose. The aspen leaves shimmered and the wind whispered through them like a soft chant. Terrence found Colonel Ruiz's grave and dropped to one knee, removing his cap. The metal bar gleamed in his hand, one he'd won for leading a humanitarian mission. He placed it atop her headstone. "Margaret," he murmured, voice thick, "I'm adrift. The system I believed in is broken. My family is being punished for standing up. My country still won't see me." He closed his eyes, tears slipping free. What now? The wind swelled, rustling the branches. In that moment, he felt her presence, not in ghostly form, but in the conviction that had always guided him. He inhaled deeply, steeling himself. He rose, shoulders squared. There were no easy answers, only a path forward, community, coalition, and unrelenting action. Back in Atlanta, word spread that General Bowmont would hold a press conference to address Jamal's suspension and Darius's charges. The Bowmont home was swarming with supporters, legal advocates, community leaders, and journalists. Maya Patel stood beside Simone, drafting a civil rights complaint, while Keisha organized a rally at the school board meeting. Terrence stepped before the cameras, the porch light casting his silhouette against the night. He spoke, voice echoing. "Yesterday, my son was suspended for questioning why black astronauts are absent from his history lessons. My nephew faces charges for defending his sister's right to protest peacefully. My wife and I are doctors, researchers, contributors to this community. Yet the system punishes us for exercising the most basic rights, curiosity, assembly, and free speech. We are not anomalies. This is our reality. And we will not be silenced." He paused, gaze firm. "To the school board, we demand immediate reinstatement for Jamal, dismissal of charges against Darius, and a curriculum review that includes Black history comprehensively. To the people of Atlanta, stand with us. When institutions fail, our solidarity is the armor that cannot be stripped away." A cheer erupted. Keisha high-fived Darius. Simone wiped tears from her eyes. The camera lights flashed, and in that glow, a new movement ignited. One that fused generational struggle with present-day demands. Later, as the crowd dispersed under a sky now jeweled with stars, Terrence slipped his arm around Simone. "We fractured the silence," he said softly. "In pieces," she replied, "but strong enough to rebuild." He nodded, watching their son Joel, no longer silent, advocate for his own education, and Darius, fierce and unbowed, preparing to fight his charges in court. He realized that justice wasn't a single verdict, but the collective roar of families and communities demanding change. April's breeze swept across the National Mall, tugging at banners held high by thousands gathered on the grass. The Washington Monument loomed like a silent sentinel. At the forefront stood General Terrence Bowmont, no longer jogging through familiar streets, but standing firmly beneath the Capitol's gaze. Behind him, Keisha Turner wore a determined smile, Maya Patel held court with legal advisors, Simone Bowmont steadied Jamal and Darius, their faces alight with purpose. He lifted his hand, calling for quiet. The murmurs subsided into a hush as cameras from every major network zeroed in. "Today," Terrence began, "we've traveled from sweet Auburn to the steps of justice and found the doors locked." His voice reverberated over the crowd. "But we refuse to be turned away. Because in this country, justice isn't a privilege reserved for the powerful. It's a right granted to every citizen." He glanced at Maya, who stood to his right. Nodding, she handed him a thick binder, the Police Accountability NGO's charter she'd drafted. "We will fight qualified immunity," Terrence continued, "to ensure no badge grants brutality impunity. We will work with legislators to pass the Protection from Abuse in Public Service Act to strip immunity when officers violate civil rights." A cheer rose. Keisha stepped forward, megaphone in hand. "We're launching #UniformBeneath Coalition, uniting veterans, activists, students, and families nationwide. Because whether you wear a uniform of service or stand in the streets, our humanity binds us." Simone unsheathed a pen and signed the charter, passing it to Maya. Jamal and Darius joined them on stage, their youthful faces beaming. "I want to thank my father," Jamal said into the mic, voice clear, "for showing me that asking questions is brave." Darius spoke next. "I didn't break any law. You did when you tried to silence us. Now we hold you accountable." Terrence surveyed the sea of faces, grandparents who remembered segregation, mothers with strollers, veterans in crisp dress blues, students wrapped in pride flags. He thought back to Colonel Ruiz's words, "Armor isn't enough. You must build bridges." He raised his arms. "This rally is just the beginning. We'll hold town halls, support families, and train legal teams. We'll measure progress not by how many bills pass, but by how many lives change." Because justice is not a metaphor, it's action. As the crowd chanted, "Justice is a right," the Washington sky blazed with afternoon light, promising new beginnings. 6 months later, the Bowmont family gathered on Howard University's lawn. Jamal stood in cap and gown, diploma in hand, as classmates applauded. Simone's eyes shimmered with pride, Terrence's chest swelled with emotion. Maya's NGO had secured its first grant, Keisha's coalition chapters spanned 14 states. Darius had his assault charge dismissed after body cam footage surfaced showing the officer's misconduct. Hajj, stripped of his badge, resigned amid fresh allegations. The family posed for photos beneath towering oaks. Simone whispered, "Look how far we've come." Terrence smiled, ruffling Jamal's hair. The weight of past injustices lifted, replaced by the promise they had forged. As they walked toward the cheering crowd, Terrence paused, looking back at the columns of the university entrance. In his heart, he carried every memory, the jog, the flashbacks, the courtroom battle, the fractured home, the rally on the mall, and realized they had transformed pain into power. And at that moment, he spoke a final truth, echoing over fields and cities, into every home yearning for change. The uniform beneath? It's humanity. And we're all enlisted to defend it. General Bowmont didn't just endure injustice, he answered it with dignity and force. If that struck you, hit like, share the story, and subscribe for more narratives that refuse to stay silent. We don't just document injustice, we call it out. Stories that shake power, not just hearts.